Hi everybody, this is Eric Johnson. Today should be a pretty interesting video. And the reason I say that is because I'm going to introduce a theory I have based on some evidence I have. It's not going to show us a solve or anything like that. But it's going to be very interesting, I think, for people who are wondering what the hell is going on at the end of this chase. I've had a few emails lately, and the tone of the emails is changing. It's beginning to get very serious. People have been watching my videos, and I'm no longer getting... And by the way, I want to say something. I have no problem with people who want to dwell on the solve. For you, whatever your solve is, or if some location being pushed as the solve, whatever floats your boat, I don't really care. The reason I discussed that whole thing probably in somewhat of a negative manner last time is because it's getting in the way. It's because it's getting in the way of what I think is the really important thing is, which is to figure out what happened at the end of this treasure hunt. That to me is every bit as exciting and as important as figuring out the solve, right? Let me just say this though about those emails that I'm starting to get. I'm starting to get people who are saying, Eric, we're with you. We need to figure out what's happened. It's getting much more serious. No one's mentioned a class action suit yet, but the emails are starting to be more like, yes, we want to know what happened at the end of this. It's not so much that people right now even seem angry about it as they just seem frustrated and very curious. That's kind of what I'm hearing, curiosity. We want to know what happened. And I'll say personally, for me, frustration is the thing, not so much anger. I think there's so many different things going on here. I think elements of the Fenn family had no idea what was going on with the chase, really. As I've said before, I think for Forrest Fenn, it was a bit of Forrest Fenn and a little bit of a good old boy network. He surrounded himself with his little posse of guys. Perhaps people have speculated Shiloh knew more than most members of the family, whatever. We don't know any of that. But someone asked me to ask you guys this question. Are you prepared? Now consider the facts. It's been 10 years. A treasure hunt was started 10 years ago. A man put a treasure out there ostensibly. And for 10 years people searched for it. 4 people we absolutely know died looking for this treasure. A few more may have. They were people that were interested in the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt. They were out at the time in the wilds, if you will. I think they hadn't necessarily said that's what they were doing at the moment they died. So it seems like there are 4 people who actually said, I'm going and looking for this treasure who died. That's a big deal. 4 people died. Tens of thousands of books, if not hundreds of thousands of books sold by Forrest Fenn. Where the money went, to me, is not that important. We know some of it went to the Fenn grandchildren, i.e. to Fenn's family. Okay. That's not a big deal to me either. I do think it's a little interesting we have no figures. People have asked, I forget the lady's name, but people have asked the lady who was in charge of the books, how many? She never actually says. She goes, oh, we sold a lot. Fenn was on some program. We had good sales. We don't know how many books were sold, but we do know that books were sold. We know that hundreds of thousands of people potentially searched, spent their time, effort, and money. Some people went bankrupt doing it, from what I understand. They spent their life savings, let me put it that way. That's their problem. I mean, Forrest Fenn actually said, I've had people come to me and expect me to pay back their life's savings because they spent them looking for my treasure and they feel it's my fault. I agreed with Forrest at the time. It's not his fault. It's their fault. I believe in people being responsible for their own actions. My point is this. This treasure hunt went on for 10 years. Books were sold claiming to have clues and hints in them. Lots of money was made regardless of where it went. 4 people died. Searchers spent their time, effort, and money. Some quit their jobs. After 10 years, are you prepared for this chase being over and we don't even know if it was real? Think about that. Are you prepared to spend the rest of your lives, assuming you're a Fenn searcher? If you're not, then you're learning about something late in the game, but it's an interesting thing to learn about. I mean, there have been other treasure hunts around the world, right? There was the Masquerade. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. Somebody I know would like me to talk about that. Maybe I will. That was a treasure hunt that went on in England, I think back in the 70s, 80s, 70s. That turned out to be a bust. It was very similar to Forrest Fenn. That turned out to be a bust because I think his girlfriend, somebody in the inner circle blew it and they went out and retrieved it before someone actually figured it out. This person actually figured it out. It was a case of somebody figuring something out and someone had beaten it to them. Beaten. They got to the treasure first. And it was a big scandal because, of course, this person who got to the treasure got there by knowing the solve before they even went. It's going to touch on what we talk about today. But at least we had an understanding of what happened. You know, when we have things like Blackbeard the pirate hid a treasure thinking he was going to go back for it and it's never been found, that's one thing. But consider that this was a treasure hunt that was actually started and publicized. It had a whole story around it. It got Forrest Fenn a lot of publicity. Books were sold, etc. I'm not going to harp on that point. I'm just trying to set the ground, mentally set the groundscape for what I'm trying to say. All of this that we have been experiencing with the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt, since we have absolutely nothing but Forrest Fenn's word on anything that's happened, including the finder, who we don't know who it is, including the location, which we were never told where it is, right? It's all Forrest Fenn's word, and Forrest Fenn is dead. Yes, we have the photos. The photos were taken somewhere. We can assume Fenn's inner circle were around when those photos were taken. And we had photos put out by the, quote, finder after Fenn died. Again, those could have come from someone in the inner circle. But all that told us was that Forrest Fenn was in possession of the chest recently. And a lot of people think he simply went and retrieved it. They don't think it was ever even found. We have no proof of a finder. The Medium.com story was not any kind of confirmation of anything. Anybody could have written that story. People have said Doug Preston wrote the story. I have no idea. That's something that nobody can back up. It's just floating out there because Doug Preston's a professional writer. I felt the Medium.com, the first one article, was written pretty well. Then we had the one that showed up on Thor's Hint of Riches chat, which was another person purporting to be the finder, kind of saying that this GPS location thing, I mean, the best I could understand was they were kind of saying it's not real either. Folks, after 10 years, everything died with Forrest Fenn. We literally do not know if he retrieved it. We assume and hope, I think, that it was out there for 10 years, but we don't know. Other people say it was retrieved in 2013. Other people say it was retrieved other times. Other people say the finder did find it. We just don't know who the finder is. We have literally no identification. to prove the finder exists. We just have articles written by someone calling themselves the finder. I could do that. So are you prepared to go to your grave never knowing if this 10-year saga that many of us participate in may never have actually been real? What if it was a hoax? What if Forrest Fenn never actually put it out there? What if the pictures we recently saw were just him with a contrived situation? Oh, look, the finder brought it to me. We don't know. It's mind-boggling to me that after 10 years, this thing is going to be allowed to just go into history as an unknown quantity with no substance whatsoever outside of Forrest Fenn said, it's been retrieved, it's been found. And there is a finder, but I won't tell you who. And there is a location, and I won't tell you where. And me and the finder agreed to tell you it's in Wyoming. It was in Wyoming, the location. I just think that's incredible to think we will never know. As of right now, we will never know. We'll never know if it was even real to begin with. The whole thing could have been a hoax. How is it possible? We're never going to know. As it stands right now, we aren't. Unless this finder is real and he comes out at some point and he identifies himself and can give us the paper trail, so to speak, to show us that it really happened. Unless a friend of his comes out or an associate comes out and proves the guy exists and says this is what happened. Unless a Forrest Fenn family member or one of the inner circle knows something and comes out and tells us something, which none of this has occurred so far, we're never going to know. I just think that it almost defies belief that that could happen. But that's the way it's turned out. Something that's bothered me since this whole thing occurred, the announcement, is that when Fenn made the announcement that the find happened, he congratulated the search community, but he did not congratulate the finder. Forrest Fenn referred to the finder and said things like, he wants to keep it secret. He said the finder wants to keep the location secret, right? Never showed any great affinity for the finder. People have pointed out that he referred to him being a shy guy, shy person, and they said, ooh, Shiloh, shy guy, Shiloh, shy. I don't know. The man from back east, there's a guy, a guy named Houle. Is that his name? I don't want to screw. I think it's Houle. I just became aware of the guy. This guy, Forrest Fenn, thought was an incredible searcher. I think he called him a genius at one point to somebody. Well, this guy lives in Japan. He's Caucasian and lives in Japan. Very obviously, when you see his videos, I'll put a link to it. He's a very smart guy. I mean, he's like an academician, etc. That's back east. I mean, he's come over to the United States. I'm going to make that clear. My point is, though, that Forrest Fenn did not show any great friendship, any great love of this finder. And yet we have the finder come out who could be fake, probably was fake, I'm pretty sure it was fake, comes out and paints this really almost romantic, to the point where people thought this is a female. I mean, the whole I love Fenn and blah, blah, blah. And, Fenn wanted me to come stay with him, and not stay with him. Fenn wanted me to come live in Santa Fe. This was even though Fenn wanted to keep it anonymous, right? Kind of weird. Fenn wants to keep it anonymous about the finder, because the finder wants it that way. But Fenn also was saying, hey, why don't you come out and live in Santa Fe? That's not the best way to keep things anonymous. That was kind of weird. I'm getting a little off track, but I'm trying to, again, set this whole thing up here so you understand where we're coming from. This concept that the finder and Fenn had some great kinship, friendship, I keep reminding myself was due to that story on Medium.com. It was never due to anything Forrest Fenn said. Forrest Fenn literally did not congratulate the finder when he made the announcement about the find. I've always thought that was interesting. Forrest Fenn's family, whoever put the announcement on the old Santa Fe Trading Company, Forrest Fenn's, that announcement by someone, many people seem to think it was Shiloh, who put the announcement up, never congratulates the finder. Again, they congratulate or they say thank you to the search community. They never thank the finder. Isn't that odd? Why do we have this disparity? Again, not thinking about the story on medium.com in which someone is trying very hard to make you think they really got along with Forrest Fenn. I mean, and by the way, did you ever notice Forrest Fenn, when he was alive, said the finder wanted to keep the location secret? Forrest Fenn dies, suddenly the finder decides he doesn't care to be that anonymous. He just wants to put out this kind of eulogy to Fenn on medium.com. Very odd thing to do if you really want to be anonymous. Certainly from a legal standpoint, from a lawyer's standpoint, if this guy really was the finder, I'm sure his lawyer would say, why are you writing anything? Don't write anything. We want to be anonymous. The finder says, I'm not going to show you the location ever because Forrest Fenn didn't want it known. Now that Fenn's dead, the finder, so I should quit saying that actually, the writer, that's what I should say, the writer, finder, the writer. He says, oh no, Forrest Fenn's the reason I'm not going to ever give up the location, because Forrest wanted that location to remain pristine, untouched. You know, he didn't want Forrest Fenn searchers going out there and building shrines or having bonfires or whatever he thought might happen. Very interesting though, again, right? When Forrest Fenn was alive, the finder wanted to keep it secret, the location, and after Forrest Fenn dies, the writer, he says, Forrest Fenn wanted to keep the location secret. May not seem like a big deal, but it's all these things that kind of add up. So what happened was, we'll uncover this in part 2. What happened was, after, well, let me get to my point before we go on to part 2. My point is this. If you think about what was said by Forrest Fenn and his family, they never really seemed to care to show any great closeness to the finder. Forrest Fenn did not congratulate the finder, which a lot of people thought was odd, commented on. The announcement of the end of the chase on the old Santa Fe Trading Company page, which now, of course, has been removed, and the link to the medium.com article has been removed. That announcement did not show any affinity for the finder either, because they didn't thank the finder. My point is, there doesn't seem to be any great affinity for the finder by the family or by Fenn when he's alive. Why? Why? We know Fenn died, obviously, of a, quote, heart attack. I say quote because I've talked about this thing called broken heart syndrome, which is Japanese. They discovered this, the doctors there discovered it and gave it a name back in the day. And it's a condition where great stress or depression even can affect your heart, and basically you can die from it. And it looks very heart attack-like. I mean, a heart attack, I guess, is technically when your heart is blocked, the blood in the arterial system, so therefore it doesn't get any, you die. This other syndrome, this broken heart syndrome, is something that actually kind of beats you down to the point you just die. And of course, Fenn was 90, and the point I'm trying to make very clear before we move on to part 2 is, I don't think the Forrest Fenn family or Forrest really cared for the finder. Why? They acknowledged that the find occurred. Forrest said there was a finder, but he never really seemed, if you think about it, before this article was written, Fenn never really seemed to have any great affinity for the finder. Why? And why did the finder, the writer, feel it was so necessary to make it seem like they were such great buddies? That's a whole nother story. Part 2 coming up. We need to figure out what's going on, folks. We need to figure out what happened at the end of this treasure. We cannot let this thing go into history as a complete unknown to the point where it could have been a hoax even, and we don't even know. After all we've done, after all the people that have searched, after people have died, etc. It would be unconscionable if that happened.